Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. Powered by Leadership Choices.
Welcome to Leaders Talk, the podcast for better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. My name is Carsten Draht, and I'm one of the managing partners of Leadership Choices. Today, we have a special podcast for you. The war in the Ukraine leaves us all speechless, overwhelmed, angry, sad, and we want to do something. This is why we decided to put a conference together and invite people who usually are good in talking things through, namely coaches. So we put together a panel with coaches from the Ukraine, from Russia, from Moldova, and from other places to see what they think about the war, how they experience the situation, and most importantly, what they think about the chances of getting back to peace. And after that, there will be a second panel, and this panel is also part of this conference, but will be brought to you in a separate podcast. There we will talk about what are the diplomatic ways that are currently being engaged in order to come to a peace process, and also how are help organizations reacting, what are things that currently are needed, and how do we match demand and supply on such a large scale. So this is the topic for the next 2 episodes of Leaders Talk. I wish you some good insights. I wish you good reflections, and please let us know what you think. Send us an email to leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. But now let's get right into the conference. Welcome everybody. Welcome to our virtual conference, War in Ukraine, What Needs to be Learned and Unlearned to Enable Peace, powered by Kellogg-WHU Executive MBA Network and by Leadership Choices. We are very happy that you are all here. Many of us felt deeply sad, deeply angry, deeply hopeless about the war in Ukraine, about the situation there, about the people that had to flee, about the people that are standing and are fighting in a pointless war. And we were thinking, what can we do? We are a coaching organization, and our business is to talk about stuff, to talk things through, to process, to help make sense, to help connect the dots. And hence we figured, why don't we organize a conference where coaches from different parts of the world, or different parts of the sides of the parties involved in this war, kind of come together and share their perspectives. And this conference is not about what is right, what is wrong, or whose fault was what. This is not the point. There are a couple of things that are defined for us. The war has to end now, better today than tomorrow. We have to find a way to enter from a process of war to a process of ceasefire and eventually peace. And this will only happen if we talk. This will not happen if we continue to kill each other or to polarize with words to make any sort of communication or dialogue next to impossible. And this is really the idea for this conference. Maybe it's idealistic, that's totally fine, but we still want to use every little possibility that we have to build bridges rather than separate people by war. And maybe a bit of overview before I hand it over to Hanne from the Kellogg-WHU Executive MBA Network. So we have a bit of an opening, then we will go into our first session, and I will introduce the panelists shortly. There we will talk with coaches, with leadership development experts who come from either Ukraine, live in Ukraine, come from Russia, or work with Russian and Ukrainian clients right now and hear their perspective. We will then also have a bit of an open mic session to answer questions. We will then go into a reflection session to process the thing that we heard. Therefore, we will break up in breakout groups. And then we will have session 2. Session 2 will focus on what can we do to help? What are options? Also, what are diplomatic ways to come from a process of war or logic of war to a peace process? How can that work? And also there, we will have a short reflection session. and then we will have some exchange, wrap up, closing words, and then we conclude. So this is really the idea for today. And with this, I would like to hand it over to Hanne.
Yes, welcome everybody also from our side. My name is Hanne, as Carsten mentioned. I'm heading the Kellogg-WHU Executive MBA program here in Wallendal, a beautiful city in the middle of Germany. And we here at WHU, of course, also like everybody else, this topic is dominating. It's dominating our lives, it's dominating on our minds, and it's emotionally challenging. And this is why we really appreciated the initiative from Carsten and his team to come together, and we see it as our obligation as a university to provide the platform to communicate together, because this is what we need to do, as Carsten said, in order to help and to move forward. So thanks again, Carsten, for your initiative, for bringing us together. We invited our network across the world, actually, and hoping that many, a few more will come later, as they mentioned. And I think that's the best thing that we can do in order to move forward in this challenging crisis.
Thank you, Hanne. And I think maybe one thing to mention, the primal DNA of WHU, Kellogg-WHU, is international understanding, is international collaboration. There are participants from Russia, there are participants from Ukraine, from all other countries. So this is really the heart. And I think for all of us, it felt like I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe we are going back 70 years in history and starting to fight again into a war. And I think we are all coming from this, that's totally unbelievable. And from this moment of shock, moving into something that we can do. So Hanne, thank you so much for engaging the Kellogg-WHU network, and also Gary, and everybody here is welcome. Okay, so I'll make sure to unpin you so that we have our panel together. And with this, I would like to introduce our panelists today. We have 4 colleagues from different backgrounds, different industries. I would like to introduce Olga Vasylets, or Olya, I think is the more informal name, if I'm right. So Olya, you are a coach. You worked and lived in Kiev. You had to flee. You're in the central of Ukraine now, in a small village. Hopefully there will be no air raids today, so that you can be with us during the conference. I know that at night you guys have to shut off the light to not become targets. So thank you so much for making it and being here with us today, Olya.
Thank you, Carsten. Hello, everyone, and nice to meet you. Yes, you told it's right. My name is Olga, or Olya, and I am in the central part of Ukraine right now. And actually, we have a few air attacks warnings, but it's calm here right now. And I hope for the time of the conference, it will be still calm. So I hope we will do our job good.
Thank you, Olya, for being with us and taking also the risk. Then we have Natalia with us. Natalia is a banker, but also a coach. Natalia, where are you right now?
Hello, everyone. Right now I'm in Lviv. So who knows, it's a city in west of Ukraine, where is head office of the bank, which I'm heading together with my colleagues. And I connect from home, since in the bank we are somehow, so it's not the situation as normal, and I simply do not have a private room. So I decided to stay at home, to come back home after lunch. So yeah, and I hope you hear me well. I couldn't find headphones, so.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalia. Welcome. And then we have Anna Kirin with us. Anna is LinkedIn, or is connected to us in Moscow right now. Anna, where are you? And you are you're part of, or you're the president of a leadership development organization CBSD Thunderbird. So welcome, Anna, to the panel.
Thank you, Mary, very much. I'm also connected to you from home in the city of Moscow. As Karsten said, I have had the pleasure over the last 20 years to lead a leadership development company in Moscow, which is part of Thunderbird School of Global Management, or has been until recently.
Thank you, Anna. Welcome. And last but by no means least, there's Leonid with us. Leonid, also a fellow coach with Russian origins, has lived in the US, is now living in Spain, and is working with both Ukrainian and Russian clients. Welcome, Leonid.
Thank you so much, Karsten. You know, it's interesting what I say. It's like a Russian origin, right? Up until recently, I was not really quite. I mean, I was aware, but I never paid attention to the fact that actually I'm half Ukrainian, and all of a sudden it just became relevant, you know, in the new context. Yes, lived in, was born and grew up in Russia. So today I'm in a beautiful city of Palma de Mallorca.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yes, I just decided to take a vacation, and this is a gift to be, and such an honor to be on the panel of this conference. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely, you're welcome. Olya, let's start with you. So why don't you tell us your story? You were affected by this conflict between, I say conflict now because now we have an active war, but before that, we also had some sort of a conflict in 2014. You've been affected by this twice. Can you walk us through what happened 2014 for you, and then also what happened in February of this year?
Thank you, Karsten, for the question. Yes, actually, I was affected twice. The first time I was not affected, so like I was not hurted, I was not fled in rush, but now it's different story this time. But going back to 2014, I was living in Kharkiv that time, and I graduated from the university, and I was like working on my first job. It was actually unexpected for us that, and we called it also war in 2014. It was unexpectedly for us the occupation of Crimea and attack of Donbass, like Donetsk and Lugansk region. We in Kharkiv we also had a lot of fear about probable Kharkiv Republic, and most of people in Kharkiv didn't want to become such part of occupied or just occupied territory. But at that time I realized that we have a danger of attack all the time. So I moved in Kiev and started my life in Kiev. And actually, I hoped that this war will never become true. But as we see, it is already, it happened, and we just need to stand, and we need to get the victory in this war. About my story in 2014, I had a lot of friends. Some of them were from Russia, and we just stopped our relationships, our connections, because of very different points of view. And it was really strange for me when some people may think or even say that it's normal to occupy territory of other country. It's not okay. And I had also, and I have right now, friends from Crimea. They had to flee from Crimea because they didn't want to live under occupation, and they didn't want to live in bad conditions. some of them moved also in Kiev or next to cities next to Kiev, and now they are forced to move in other countries and in other cities of Ukraine, and we do not know if we will have even possibility to go back our homes. So it's uncertainty right now.
Mhm.
It is.
And Olya, you've been doing many things. You've been an entrepreneur. You've been a fashion designer, and you recently decided to become a coach. What do you do right now? How do you spend your time, and how do you make a living?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I had a lot of great plans for the future before the war began, and now this plan they are impossible right now. Almost all the projects stopped, and I'm not sure that they will be continued someday. So in one moment, I decided that I need to do something useful for my country, for my community, for myself. And I started volunteer a lot, and I'm volunteering right now as a coach, as a translator and interpreter. And sometimes I even have some like small projects about logistic volunteering. And it helps a lot to be sustainable, emotionally regulated, but it's not about money. Right now, I have no projects that are for pay. So it's my next step to find the way how I'm going to earn money. And I have also decided that as a coach, I need to help Ukraine. I can do it as a business coach, as an executive coach. I can help Ukrainians to revive, to restore, or rebuild our economics. So I decided that I will find a new job, probably as a coach, and I will keep volunteering as a coach and as a translator. So that's my plan.
Thank you, Olya. Natalia, you're originally from Moldova, and you've been working and living in Ukraine since many, many years, also with your family. How did you experience the time between 2014 and now, and what happened to your family?
Thank you, Karsten. So I'm originally from Moldova. For those who do not know, Moldova is a neighboring country with Ukraine and Romania on the other side. So in 2014, entire Moldovan society was as well shocked by the fact, because we are very, let's say, in many aspects, we have same problems and with the same neighbor, which is Russia. I mean, the same problems after Soviet Union collapse and regaining of independence. We as well in Moldova had our own war, which we all call not Transnistrian war, but Russian conflict, which still is going on. So it's kind of a Crimea, let's call it. And when Crimea happened, of course, we all can interpret or you know, there is a visible link of behavior or of potential threat. And when I got the job in Ukraine, so I'm working in German company, Inspiring Development, and we got a project to recover a very, very small bank in the west of Ukraine, Bank Lviv, with the same name of the city. And always we had one main risk, which was called war. And, you know, from one hand side, we all understood rationally that such a risk exists, but I would never, ever, and now I cannot believe that we actually experience it, that I had to explain to my kids that they have to move out. They still do not understand why they cannot come home. Lviv and Ukraine is their home. My younger son, he came to Lviv, he couldn't walk and he couldn't speak. So he speaks Ukrainian, he goes to Ukrainian school, and this is his home. And this is my home already. And I'm getting emotional because it's a lot of, it's not even unfairness. It's somehow, the feeling of deep disappointment that in 2022, when we all know about human rights, about dignity, about wholeness of a people, of a society, of a freedom rights, something like this happens. And actually, it's not about politics, it's about people who in the end suffer. And I think this war touched everyone on the world. And it's a moment in history where I think after this war, I hope that humanity will be celebrated in completely different shapes. So this is my hope and what keeps me, so to say, what holds me strong. And my family is now abroad. They stay in Europe. We decided that they don't go to Moldova because it's a little bit of emotional and social pressure. It's difficult to explain why I am staying here and not leaving, and I just want to avoid these kinds of discussions with my friends. And so I'm honored to be part of a history here in Ukraine, together with these brave and excellent people. And I don't know what else I can say. We try to live, and we decided now we choose to have optimistic stoicism. So we understand that it will continue, and we need a little bit of hope in form of some optimism, and this help us to stay and to help armed forces to free up this amazing country for these amazing people, so that we can live a normal life.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you very much. Anna, I would like to bring you in. And I would like to point out that since we have people from different countries, we are not representing the sides of a war here, but we want to hear different opinions. And Anna, you are here also as a very brave, as a very honorable human being and business leader and leadership developer. Anna, how are you experiencing the situation right now in Moscow? How is the situation for you? You also had people in Ukraine. What happened to them?
Thank you very much, Karsten. First of all, my deepest condolences to everybody who's experiencing this war, not just by hearing about it, but who actually had to experience it firsthand. I think there is nothing more horrible of what can happen to human beings than war. Nothing more horrible than is ever what is done. Just a little bit, 2 sentences about my own history. I'm Russian by origin, but I grew up and was educated in the United States, came back to Russia in the 1990s because, like Olga was saying, I was in my 20s, idealistic, and I really wanted to make a difference in a country that is new and being built. And here we are 30 years down the road, and our feelings when this happened were, first of all, shock and disbelief, because we were told by that there is no invasion going to happen in the Ukraine. And we actually, to be honest with you, all the analysts were saying, no, this is not going to happen. It's not in anybody's best interest. So outrage, shock, disbelief. But I think what we're feeling now, mostly here in Russia, on many levels is, the word broken comes to mind. It's first of all a broken heart for a country and people we love. It's broken connections. because everybody has ties, Russians and Ukrainians have close ties. And I know that a lot of Ukrainians, they do not want to be speaking to Russians anymore, just, and I think it's understandable. It's a broken identity as a society and as people, because it's hard to be associated by the world with something this horrible. It's a broken trust, it's broken lives on so many levels, broken businesses, people, it's hard when you have for years, and I'm no longer in my 20s, so that throughout my whole life I have, it's been part of my story to tell people about the Russian culture and the humanitarianism behind the people. And just we had an event earlier today with some of our clients that one of the clients were talking about the fact that they will know, they don't know what the future of their business is because the market's relationships are broken. And this person represented a company that it's a diamond company, right, in Russia. And she said, we've always been in such a privileged position because the other suppliers of diamonds come from Africa and they have always been associated with blood. And, it's hard to believe that now Russia is associated with blood. And I've been asked by many, including my own children, why in this situation, having a US citizenship, am I staying in Moscow? And what am I still doing here? And it's been an incredibly difficult choice over the last few weeks, but I still believe that education and developing humanistic leaders is almost key to one of the questions you're posing in this conference is, what do we do for further peace? And long-term wise, education, I think, is one of our best tools. And I have actually made this decision again in my life. I'm going to stay here because I think my life matters more here right now in this situation, and maybe more than even before, than it could in places where I would be safer. So it's, we're all experiencing how life is changing. A lot of liberties are also broken just in the last 2 months. A lot of media is being repressed, but my colleagues and our team at CBSD is doing all we can to just continue doing what we do best and providing support to leaders and people and organizations who are our clients, and which is sometimes hard to do in this situation.
Mm. And Anna, you had an associate working for you in Ukraine. What happened to this person? What happened to the relationship?
Alyona is somebody who worked with our company since 2000. So I have been with CBSD from 1999. So we have worked together for over 20 years and worked closely. And she knows me very well, and we were not just colleagues, we were friends on many levels, and she knows my background. So there can be no misconstruction of how I feel about the war in Ukraine. And I call it war. I don't call it special operation. A war is a war. And And, you know, it was when it took me a couple of days to get in touch with her after the hostilities started. And, you know, as I was trying to express to her, you know, my feelings of like, you know, condolences and, you know, shame and how can we support you? And she told me, you know what, Anya, can I be honest with you? And I said, of course. And she said, you know, over the last 3 days, we've started hating Russians. And she said, and me too. And I kind of like was, you know, I was choking up, and I said, Alona, yeah, I'm so sorry. I can understand it. I can. But she basically said, please don't call. Because as she was being, she was living in her Kiev apartment, and she couldn't evacuate from Kiev because her mother was very aged and not very mobile. So as sirens were sounding in her city, she couldn't even go down to a bomb shelter because she had to stay with her mother in the apartment. So this is an example of how really long-term relationships, you know, that they are no longer. And I think those connections and those human connections are part of big casualties of this conflict.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. Leonid, from your perspective, you're kind of almost a bridge builder between the two countries with your background. You've seen the world, you've lived different places. You have also an international perspective, but you share the Russian soul, the Ukrainian heart. You work with clients from either side. How did you experience 2014? And how did you experience the time after February 24?
Yeah, thank you, Karsten. How I experienced 2014? Right then, it was, I started feeling like something was broken. It's like just Anna said, you know, that's what we were dealing with, brokenness. Something was broken. The trust was broken. I feel like it, and I couldn't believe it because I used to go to Crimea on vacation when I was a student and I was younger. It was a place for us to go from St. Petersburg to Crimea, and I would always go there. And it's like I look for, like, I go to villages where people spoke Ukrainian because it was my mom's mother tongue, and to her she would say always like, "Oh, Ukrainian language is like music to my ears." And then all of a sudden, it's like, you know, something was broken. And but I also experienced right then how in that part of the world there was, you know, also the opinions split. And I knew some people traveled in Crimea afterwards, and I said, "Oh yeah, people smiling, everybody's happy, blah blah blah." And then I heard completely different stories. It's like, wow, that's right there. And I thought, it's like we live in split reality. It's like split reality. And that was, it really kind of stirred up some fear in me. And it's like, how far can it go? What else? It's like, what else? But then for a while, nothing was happening. And I was still curious, like, how come? It's like, how come this happened? And I had a sense of complacency. And also I got that from some of my clients as well. It's like, all of a sudden we made it okay, right? And so something was coming up. It didn't, this war didn't happen overnight. The invasion happened really fast, but what led to it was happening for quite a while. Mm-hmm. It was already there. My clients, both on the Russian side, on the Ukrainian side, once in a while they would articulate that something is brewing, something is happening. And one of my clients, I remember one of my clients just said, it's like, aren't we just all kind of like resting in the place of complacency? I was like, that really stirred up something. It's like I started getting more curious. Complacency, seems like complacency was allowed for this to happen because it was growing up. It was happening. It's like the two realities were already like drifting apart more and more and more. So in this particular situation, I was hearing completely different messages, you know, from people who saw things in a different way. My Ukrainian clients, with whom I got really, really close. You know, when you coach someone for a couple of years, there were long-term relationships because they were also going through extensive leadership program training. I got to know what's happening in their lives and their families. And then, you know, when the war happened, most of them ended up in Poland. They managed to escape. So yeah, and there was a sense of disconnect, not between me and them, but I felt kind of viscerally that disconnected from something. They've been uprooted. And some of them have children. And it's like, how do they explain it to children? And we had this conversation. It's like, how do you explain to your kids what's happening? It does make sense to adults, much less to children, why they cannot go back to their apartment, to their home. Yeah, and some of my Russian colleagues also, and some of my clients ended up being outside of Russia, and they couldn't return to Russia. And they couldn't claim the status of a refugee, of course. And just like Anna said, it's like, you know, they also experience some hostility. You know, some of them cannot go back to Russia for the reason that now they consider to be, you know, traitors because they posted anti-war messages on the media. So they're stuck as well. So it's just brokenness. And of course, dealing with my own broken heart. Mm-hmm. That's reality. And I was like, I've been contemplating over it, and it's like, what is the hope? And I just recently had a conversation with a dear friend of mine who's here, and about the Japanese art of kintsugi. I probably mispronounced it. You know, filling the cracks with gold, and I feel like this conference, conversations like this, it's like might lead to healing and filling the cracks with gold.
Thank you, Leonid. And when you contemplate about your Russian clients, which you also have, or you also have, I mean, help us understand, is there a split? Like, is there a portion of your clients saying, no, this war is, you know, a necessary evil, needs to happen? Or is this like a unanimous position? How would you describe that?
Yeah, well, my clients, my Russian clients, they don't believe that this war needed to happen. We're kind of aligned about, you know, around what's happening. Where they're just heartbroken because, you know, International Course Federation cut them off. You know, they closed the chapter, which is, you know, understandable. They don't want to support the chapter, but pulling out support, not allowing them to renew their credentials. They feel it's like we are the ones who actually can help people, you know, like Anna, probably it's like other people, you know, to support them, to basically to raise the awareness, not to be fed by the news media in Russia that is just sheer propaganda. It's just propaganda. And but actually kind of rise above it and understand, you know, it's like the context of what is happening. So they are the ones who could do that. And it's like, so they feel like they have to be too careful right now. It's like one of them actually, you know, spends some time in Europe. and she doesn't even know how to advertise herself now. She said, if I say Russian, people probably will just turn away from me. But she said, I just want to help people to understand what really is happening. So they are in a tricky situation. Yeah, but none of my clients actually believes that, well, this war is just, or it needed to happen.
Thank you, Leonid. And I think this decision from the International Coaching Federation to discontinue operations in Moscow and disregard coach credentials is really throwing out the baby with the bathwater, kind of. And it's part of the polarization of the language, of the activities, of this, the war with other means. Olya, I would like to ask you a second question. Shed some light I think in Germany, and I talk about myself, there definitely was this element of complacency, not wanting to see what is going to happen when Crimea got occupied, right? Now, maybe you can help us understand what is the rationale, or what's the situation? So Crimea is a region which is part of Ukraine, and a lot of Ukrainians live there for obvious reasons. A lot of Russians come there because it's a nice place. It's like Southern Europe, I would say, or it's like Mallorca, where Leonid is right now, where a lot of Germans go to. But it's like, for me, it's like a scenario like Germans would go to Mallorca and say, now this is Germany now, right? So Olya, can you help us understand what the situation was, what changed? You lived there. Can you explain?
I will try to explain about Crimea. Actually, I'm not historian or not politician, but I have some amount of stories from 2014. And these stories are from different people. Some of them were my friends. Some of them are still my friends. And there is really a strange situation as for me, because there were so many different people in Crimea before 2014. A lot of them were Crimean Tatars who actually lived, this is actually their territory. And there were also a lot of Ukrainians who felt them like they are Ukrainians after Ukraine became independent. And there were also some part of people, and this is a story that I heard from one of my friends. Crimea is very nice and very warm place, and it is nice for living. And that place was very attractive for military forces from Soviet Union, from Russia, who moved before independent Ukrainian in Crimea, and they didn't felt like they were Ukrainians when Ukraine became independent. So they still thought that they are Russians or Soviet Union people. And in 2014, they actually was very happy that Russia can just occupy this territory. So they wanted to be Russians, but they didn't want to go to Russia. And actually, this is strange. This is illogical. It's for me.
Unless you want to be Russian and have good weather.
Excuse me?
Unless you want to be Russian and have great weather at the same time.
Yes, and great place and sea and so on. So there is probably about this splitness, yes. Some of people do want that Crimea became Russia. But a lot of other people, a lot of Ukrainians and Tatars had to move from Crimea because they needed to be in safety. They needed just, it is also about dignity of people. I had one friend, she was Crimean, and she lives in Russia now. And she was happy that Crimea became Russian. And when we asked why you are so happy about that, it's okay because I like Russia and I want Crimea became Russian. So it's very difficult to catch a logic from these thoughts. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's trying to make the not understandable a little bit, Olya. So thank you for that attempt. And Anna, I would like to shed some light on the situation that we have right now in Moscow. There are heavy sanctions. There's also polarization towards Russians in total, right? I mean, it's even happening here in Germany. Russians are being attacked, are being approached with aggression. How is the situation in everyday Moscow? How is the situation in the shops? How is the situation for your business? And how is the reaction of the people?
It's a difficult question. As far as everyday life is concerned, I think the consumer is seeing the situation change for them very quickly. The prices have gone up in different sectors by various amount of percent, but some things the prices went up at least 100%. Some things went up 300%. There's been a lot of people were buying a lot of goods when the business exodus started happening. Not even sanctions as much as business the boycott of Moscow. And as companies were declaring that they're leaving the market, people started stocking up on goods. And so that was happening a lot. And some of the products disappeared from the shelves of the stores. To me, what I saw is that the reaction to the business boycott was maybe not what the businesses were expecting, because the propaganda works like 24 hours a day of what's going on. And in order to find reliable sources of information in Russia, you actually now have to look where to go to. You have to know who to listen to. You have to look them up on YouTube. You have to turn on VPN. You have search for reliable information has become difficult, and you have to know where to go. For the rest of the population, only TV is available, and that's going on 24 hours a day. All of the channels, are saying the same things. How you have now seen how the West, how two-faced they are, and how immediately, they're against the population. They don't give a damn about humans. The pharma is leaving. Essential goods are leaving. So the reaction to the business boycott has been, I think, not maybe what the business wanted. They, not at least in Russia, people are getting angrier. And I think one of the most important messages we need to make as a thinking society is when you implement a certain action, you have to take away the emotion and think long term. What's the effect that it's going to have? So we don't see many Z letters on the streets, but there are some. And to be honest with you, I'm grateful to people who actually mark their cars or their clothing with Z, because I know not to walk up to them. So it's kind of an important piece of information. I'm not going to be talking to those people, but among my friends, I'm very fortunate. I don't have family members or close friends who have an opinion different than what I do. This war should never have happened. It should be stopped immediately. But as I said, for the first time in my life, I'm very conscious of who I talk to. And I think the second part of this conversation should be about what are the meaningful long-term actions we need to be taking in order for this never to happen again, kind of like what we did after World War II. We need to rethink this again as human beings populating this globe.
Absolutely, Anna, and that's exactly what I would like to do. And Natalia, I would like to loop you in most probably with a very difficult question, because we are all scratching our heads around this. And this is, we are in a war mode now. Eventually, hopefully, better sooner than later, there will be a ceasefire. But this is a thing that has been building up for many, many years. So from your perspective, also from the reality of a business, from working in Ukraine, what do you think, what are necessary steps towards a peace process? I'm not even talking about peace, but a process that will work in the direction of peace.
I'm not sure if I understand correctly. We believe that for 49 days now we work in a process for peace. So as Olya said, with a lot of volunteering, with a lot of support, with a lot of help. If I understood correctly the question, so currently we have active war phase with air raids, like as Olya said as well, life feels like there is a little bit of normality if you don't have air raids. And when you hear these sirens, it's just devastating. Yeah, so basically, and it's normal. People get stressed, people get nervous, and for many reasons. First of all, for their life and life of their close ones. And then when it's over, and luckily all the bombs were either catched and nothing happened, then you move on. Yeah, you just go out from the shelter and you move on. We are located here in West, so West is kind of part of a country where most of the refugees come. So currently, I don't know if you are aware of the statistics, but I'm sure you are. More than 12 million of Ukrainians have migrated, 3.5 abroad, and the rest to western part of western regions of Ukraine. Yeah, so it's not only Lviv, it's all parts. So currently, this region now is very, very busy. I've never seen such a busy city, and you see all these poor people who are waiting to register themselves with kids, and they have only 2 days. So they basically stay 2 days on the street to get a registration. And then, you stay overnight in a shelter, and then you have to decide what you do next. You go to an apartment for a week, or you go to Poland, and it's a lot of social, humanitarian problem, I would say. And what I hear here locally, and why we are grateful that we can help. And also we hope that in the areas where the active war is happening, there we need peace, there we need the war to stop from day one. And once we, the war will stop when the last shell will disappear, will fire up. So basically it will be a process. We all understand that we don't use these slogans of we want to win anymore, because we want the freedom, we want peace. It's not about winning someone, because I think we won in day 2 already, and I don't want to become a military expert. It's not the point right now. And I think it will be a lot of frustration, especially for this, because it was a war since 2014. Indeed, and it was located somewhere. Now it's all over the country, so nowhere in Ukraine it's safe now, I could say. Yeah, we have relatively safer places with less attacks, but in a war you never know what happens next, so you live in a moment in a way. What needs to be done from us and from businesses? Everyone is working. Soviet country continues to move forward. We also have inflation, we also have logistics broken. We are more in favorable situation here, and that's why we try to support as much as possible the directly affected regions. What I personally think and what we think here, that actually we are sure once we finish this horror, Ukraine will be flooded with money, and we will rebuild roads, houses, and economically we will restore, I think, relatively in 10 years, it will be a new Ukraine. What I think will be a long-lasting, broken-hearted, I don't know, heavy thing in our souls, it's a psychological effect. And I think this will require a lot of time, where also coaching comes into a role. And yeah, the war shows up the worst and the best in people. And somehow I believe that this war cannot leave anyone with no position. So anyone should have a position. And of course, this is what impacts the most relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're fully right, Natalia. I mean, Ukrainians have started to work for peace in the moment they started to defend themselves. That makes total sense to me. But peace is not the absence of war. And as Germany, as member of Germany, we have started 2 wars, with with the world, but with our neighbor France, for example. We had many wars, and now this is a place where there is a special friendship, not a friendship that is kind of without any burden, but a friendship that goes along with responsibility, right? And I think, or if you look at South Africa and apartheid, when apartheid kind of was officially ended, the process that started to introduce forgiveness, to not foster hate. And I'm not saying it's 100% successful or not by no means easy, right? So I'm looking for what are things that need to be happening to start forgiving. And this is probably too early because the war is still there, right? And that's totally accepted, but that's kind of the thoughts that we are having. And yeah, maybe Natalia, go ahead.
A political question, but to give forgiveness, someone has to ask for it. Mm-hmm. This is my answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Leonid, you look at it from an outside position. What's your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, I was listening to Natalia, to you, Natalia. It's like everybody has to have a position that really resonated. This is not the time when just gonna observe, and it seems like there's been, allowing for this war to happen, unfortunately. Not really supporting it, but also allowing. As I said, it's been building up for a long time. And when I lived in the United States, I just couldn't believe how oblivious some politicians and the government in general, doesn't matter who's in the White House, has been oblivious and allowing Putin to gain so much power. His position on Crimea, on Ukraine has been known, but somehow, I don't know, it's like maybe the attitude, it's not in my backyard. I don't know what it is. And I was actually, for 20 years, I was working as a simultaneous interpreter in the United States. And one of my clients was State Department. Another one was a Department of Commerce. And it was this almost flirting with Putin. That's what I experienced, kind of flirting. And that very embarrassing visit of Hillary Clinton to Moscow was like unbelievable. It's like the Russian community in Washington, where I live, it's like, what are they trying to do here? Don't they see who Putin is, what his plans are, and what he's up to? So that's what I observed, and that's what I experienced myself. Yeah, and not really. It seems like we need to pay more attention to what is happening in our neighbors, with our neighbors. Also, I haven't lived in Europe long enough to know how much attention was paid by European community to what was happening. It's hard to believe that this was overlooked somehow, and it came as a surprise. Of course, it was a huge surprise. Nobody could believe my clients in Ukraine. Literally, I communicated with some of them a week before the war broke out, and I was concerned, and I was asking them, it's like, what do you think is going to happen? Is, oh, no, it's not going to happen. This would be too much. That would be too insane. Well, unfortunately, it seems like we're dealing with insanity on some level. Yeah.
Thank you, Leonid. Anna, Natalia said, in order to forgive, somebody needs to ask for forgiveness. What are your thoughts? How can there be step towards peace, step towards eventually forgiveness in your perspective?
I absolutely agree with Natalia about asking for forgiveness. And I think part, as an example, let me give you since 1991, when the USSR fell apart, there's never been an acceptance of Stalin's repression and regime. There has never been an outright statement for against communistic regime and about what happened in the 70 years. And this allowed for many, many, many people, and even among the young generations who were born after the Soviet Union fell apart, who never knew the stories, who didn't have their parents, be part of repressions, support some of what Stalin did. So there has never been an official statement, and an official statement against communism, against repressions, against crimes of the Soviet era. So I think one of the most important steps in the future is going to be for Russia to declare that the criminal nature of this act of violence on another country. And this will allow many, many Russians to say, yes, we as a country recognized this. Forgive us, dear Ukrainian relatives, neighbors, and friends. It is, I personally, I would love to say, and I do say, forgive us, dear Ukrainians. Please believe me when we say that we love Ukrainians and our Ukrainian friends and relatives and people in the country. Who is going to believe us unless position taken? So, but that the official position taken. What's it going to be except my personal words? It's like, again, it's there is, we've had historic lessons. There's a position that Germany took after World War II. And I'm sure it was not personally easy for many Germans to apologize for something they were not maybe a part of, or didn't support. But that's the position, and that's something we all have to do. And Russians will have to go through this cleansing process, and will have to ask for forgiveness on a personal level as well. But, first and foremost, I think we need to stop ceasefire. Ceasefire needs to happen immediately. Nothing is worse than the loss of lives. Nothing. And a moment of silence and reflection for everyone, because Leonid, I think you were absolutely right that a lot of the existing institutes and systems and mindsets allowed for this to happen. Basically, we failed. As the population of the world, we failed to create institutes which prevent one person to sit in power for over 20 years in a country which is 150 million strong and 1/8 of total Earth. You know, how do we prevent this in the future? But also, just as you said, Natalia, you know, we will all have to ask for forgiveness. We Russians will have to accept this. But I also think that on the other hand, we have to be very careful about collective punishment. Because collective punishment is something that at the source of a lot of evil things that humankind is known for: genocide, wars, discrimination, slavery. So there is a movement going both ways. Russians need to try on a suit of humility, and the rest of the world will need to try on a suit of, we're not going to hold each Russian individual responsible for what happened. And because once we are in a mindset where we judge people not for what they do, but for who they are, we're going to start moving in a wrong direction, you know, at the other end of the scale. I think we have to be very careful and balance those things, which is very difficult. It's very emotional.
Absolutely. We're opening it up for questions right now. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. There's one question from Hanne to Anna. Is there any real opposition right now in Russia, or would be leaving the country the only way to express opposition right now?
I have another colleague of mine here, Igor, but maybe he will help me answer this question. I think there is opposition, but there is a feeling of, you know, helplessness. What can I do? You know, if I go out in the street, even now with a blank sheet of paper, I may be arrested. You know, there's the feeling that you personally cannot do anything. I think there is no unified opposition. Navalny is in prison. There is no political force that has all been silenced. So I think it's very, you know, what's important for people in Russia now to do is to kind of concentrate on their life mission, maybe, you know, because opposition is as well. But the situation right now is almost, I feel, and Igor, please correct me, that the system right now has gone so far that it's no longer sustainable. There are a lot of things that can happen that can help it fall apart, including Putin's closest surroundings, including mass media. Is just, this is not a sustainable situation, period.
And your colleague Igor has meanwhile answered in the chat, the answer is no, there's no opposition. Unfortunately, the political landscape is ruined. So that's not
There's
very,
no consolidated opposition at all.
that doesn't sound very optimistic, does it? Okay, well, other questions for the panelists?
There was a question to Olga posed. Will you be staying in Ukraine?
Okay, yes, I'm going to stay in Ukraine, and after the war stops, I'm going to go back to Kyiv. I hope it will be safe and okay. And I'm going to, as I said, to keep my coaching practice and volunteer as a coach. So just to restore our country.
Thank you, Olya. And I'm extending the question to Natalia as well. Are you going to stay? And when is the point where you say, I need to be with my family, I need to leave?
I am with my family. So this is how we organized. I am staying in Ukraine, and then I go 1 week to stay with them. It's also very helpful to regenerate, let's say, morally. I mean, it's incredible how important it is just to be out of this physical stress. I cannot explain it here, but it's psychological pressure. It's very high in all the senses. So it's yeah. I'm staying here. I'm working here. We have a great plan ahead of us, and we know that once the war is ended, Ukraine will be restored, and it will be much more a better place, one of the best places to live, I would say. So this is our hope for future, and of course I want to be part of this building up process with all my talents, not only a banker but also as a coach.
I really love your fierce optimism. This is really awesome. There's a question from my dear colleague Conchita, who's asking, what can us normal people do to help? What is stuff that is helpful right now that we can contribute? Question to Olya, to Natalia, to everybody who wants to answer.
I think I will answer first. There are different areas where you can help. The first one is as citizens of the country, you are actually citizens. Just to make some more probably connection or even probably pressure with meetings, with some kind of meetings, just to make your governments to help Ukraine in this war, just to support Ukrainian government, Ukrainian army, and Ukrainian citizens. And another option is about informational area. We hear a lot of fakes, we hear a lot of strange narratives from Russian propaganda, and there are actually some people who believe that even not in Russia, but in different countries. So just support us in this area, just trying to find the truth and to watch the facts and proper arguments, but not just some fairy tales about Nazis in Ukraine. It's so weird. And if we talk about business, partnerships, common projects, that's what Ukrainians need, and it would be great if we can create some space where Ukrainian business can partner with other businesses in other countries. So it can make some kind of leverage for Ukrainians and Ukrainian business and Ukrainian country to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Olya. Natalia, additional thoughts?
I want to thank all the world and people, just simple people who do help a lot already. And I agree with Olya, all these activist movements, which we see every day, they have a big impact. and they impacted already governments, and I think we have to continue. So we have to really be stoic until we stop. So basically the war have to be stopped, and it is not yet. And a lot of international big companies, governments are supporting already, and there is a lot of help needed. What I was thinking that actually all these people who relocate, they need jobs. What I saw some initiatives in Romania, for example, Ukrainian ladies, they started to not cook, but prepare vareniki. It's Ukrainian dumplings, and to sell it. And a lot of people started to buy because it's nice for lunch. It's like, you know, it's homemade food, but it's really easy to cook. And I think all sort of these initiatives, because it's a horrible feeling to be a refugee. And I think to integrate these people with jobs creation and to give them a feeling of independence abroad, this will be a great support. And I think the rest, yeah, we have to stop. We have to do everything just to stop. We have to say our opinion to governments and to continue working for the peace.
Thank you, Natalia. And Anna, I would also like to ask you the question, what can we do to help the Russian people who are also part of this, who are also suffering, who are also feeling the guilt? What is there that we can do for you?
You know, when I said that we need to think of what our mission is personally, I think one of the biggest things is also, you know, businesses need to think of what their mission is as a business, because a mission is not something that can change circumstantially, no matter how horrible the circumstances are. Mission is to educate people. It's not going to help anyone if educational organizations or professional associations leave the country, you know, because education is something that helps us develop a better future, not a darker future. We've been isolated from the world information-wise. So I think I have seen a lot of action that can actually hurt progressive thinking population in Russia through, I don't know, why censor Russian official sources of information if as a counter sanctions, YouTube is going to be cut off? I don't know what I'm going to do if YouTube is going to be cut off. You know, it's my main source. It's my main place to go now for any information. Internet providers, Western internet providers, as I said, pharma. You can't, I know sometimes we want to say this, but we can't forget that there's 150 million people living in this country, you know, and all of us, even those who support Putin, they're also victims of his regime. And that's something that we need to remember, because either they have been misinformed, undereducated, you know, not everybody is a politician, you know, that they have been void of a political information, you know, so no to hate, no to hype, and first and foremost, no to violence. It makes no sense to isolate the general population from the world. It makes no sense. I think the most sense is to keep communication and information flow going, so that people are as informed as possible, and not only people who know how to dig for information and fact check, but somehow make information available even when the government is cutting it off. You know, we have to teach people critical thinking, analysis, and most importantly, we need to teach them history and lessons from history. So I would say no to isolation, which has been a big call in the people who have a moral stand to support Ukraine. But isolation, I do not believe, is the way to go.
Mhm.
I mean, and I'm not talking about consumer goods. Consumer goods, we can live without McDonald's for a while, certainly. But there are critical pieces of global connections that shouldn't be cut off. Putin is doing enough to cut those connections off himself. Don't contribute to what he is doing.
Thank you, Anna. And I would, love to speak with every one of you for more time, and we will do this. Actually, there's going to be podcasts released soon with many of the panelists. So there will be opportunities for further deep dive. We will now rearrange the panel. So in a real conference, in a physical conference, now people would storm the stage and would rearrange chairs. So if you want to grab a drink, or if you want to, visit the bathroom real quick, now would be a good time. I would like to thank you all so much for being here, for taking the risk in some cases, for being so open, so vulnerable, and so reflective about this. It's been a real honor, and please stay on for the second part. So thank you so much.
And what have you learned, Carsten?
So this was our first panel. One quote comes to mind that I heard the other day, that was, if Russia stops the war, there's no more war. If Ukraine stops to fight, there's no more Ukraine. And I think this is the basic understanding of both Olya and Natalia, when Natalia said, we are working towards peace by fighting since day one in order not to get totally absorbed into Russia or totally occupied by Russia. But on the other hand, we need more than that. We need more than fighting. We need more than ceasefire, or we need more than not fighting a ceasefire. We need to also think about steps, how to engage into a peace process, how to engage into forgiving. But as Natalia rightly pointed out, in order to forgive, somebody needs to ask for forgiveness first. And this is something that looks to me like it's far from happening. So not overly optimistic. And I like this metaphor from Leonid, this Japanese art of bringing broken pieces of porcelain back together, healing them with gold, not covering up the cracks, but really making them a unique piece of art again. That maybe is very idealistic for some, but the alternative is also not an alternative that I would like to think about, like a total war or a prolonged war that has not any perspective of becoming better or entering eventually into a peace process. So there will be a second part in the next couple of days, the second panel of this conference. So let's be back then. And in the meantime, please share your thoughts with us. Send us an email to leadership-choices.com. And now, thank you and stay healthy. See you next time. Bye.
This was an episode of Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world, powered by Leadership Choices. If you want to give us feedback, please send an email to leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. Thank you for listening.